So I know I got a bit of a late start, but I finally managed to get around to Stranger Things Season 3 and figured I'd share my thoughts on it. First, of course, you should probably know what I think of Stranger Things Seasons 1 and 2. I do intend to do full, more in-depth analyses of them at some point, but just for the sake of giving you context here, Stranger Things Season 1, amazing. I genuinely did not know what to expect. I knew it was one of the most popular Netflix original series, but then again, Netflix original series is slowly becoming the new Sci-Fi Channel original movie. I mean, it doesn't necessarily always speak to quality, but I finally got around to watching the first season, and it was great. Darn near perfect for a TV series. If season 1 was all we had ever gotten, I would have been 100% satisfied and called it great. Season 2 was a bit of a step down, but at the same time, it was still not bad. I still thought it was well put together. Not as well put together as season 1, but still a good continuation, even if it did repeat a couple of things here and there. But otherwise, I think season 1 and season 2 are both really good. Season 3, not so much. I realize that's not necessarily a shocking thing to say, but yeah, season 3 just wasn't as good. That's not to say season 3 is a total wash. It's got plenty of good elements within it, but those elements never really come together to form a cohesive whole, not in the way the past seasons have done. Like, season 1 was so expertly woven together. Everything felt like it belonged there. There was really no fat to be trimmed. Everything was necessary. You always felt like you were watching a single story, but you were coming at it from multiple angles, and even though they weren't necessarily fully connected at first, you never got the sense that they were disconnected, let's say. It always felt like it was one story, and you were seeing it from these multiple angles, and when it all finally did come together by the end, it all made total sense. Similar thing with season 2, although it tended to wander on occasion. If you've seen season 2, you know one very specific example of how it kind of went off on a tangent that never really saw much payoff. But at the same time, you could still tell that it was this one story being told from multiple different perspectives, so that again, when it came together at the end, it felt natural. You didn't feel like you were having all these disparate parts suddenly being forced together. Season 3 does feel like a bunch of disparate parts being forced together by the end. Nothing really clicks the same way that it does. It all feels like 3 or 4 or however many there were different stories happening simultaneously that just happened to wind up converging at the end. And some of those stories are better than others. Like the whole subplot with Dustin and Steve and Robin finding the evil Russian conspiracy in the shopping mall, I mean, it stretches credibility. Even for a show like this, it requires a severe suspension of disbelief to accept it. But at the same time, that was really entertaining. Like, I never would have expected in season 1 that Dustin and Steve would have made such a great pairing for this show, but here we are. And adding Robin into the mix was actually a good choice, because it added a new dynamic to that. And seeing them uncover this conspiracy, again, for as incredibly improbable as it was, it felt in line with the idea of the show being an 80s homage. That felt like it would be an 80s movie. But everything else around it tended to vary in terms of quality. The stuff with Will and Mike and Eleven and Max and Lucas, that whole thing felt like they weren't entirely sure what to do with the characters some of the time, or in some cases, like they completely forgot the character dynamics. Like season 2 that introduced Max and Billy, it was very clearly shown that Max and Billy hate each other. Like, really, really hate each other. There is no good between them at all. And yet, for some reason, in season 3, Max is suddenly concerned about Billy when he gets mind flayed, and that comes out of nowhere. It never really gets an explanation. They try to make Billy sympathetic to an extent towards the end, but we're given no reason to have that sympathy beforehand, and it's kind of just thrown in at the last minute, if I'm being honest. But more importantly, we don't know why Max's attitude has suddenly changed. We never really get that sort of explanation. It felt weird. And of course, Mike is still kind of in his emo Mike phase for a large chunk of it, but just for a different reason this time around. Then, of course, you have the stuff with Hopper, and I don't know, everything else kind of felt off somehow. And of course, speaking of 80s homage, it wasn't done as well in this season, I don't think. Like, you know how in the last couple of seasons they tied it all in together perfectly? The whole way they related Dungeons and Dragons to the events that were happening in Hawkins, that was wonderfully done. From the moment Will says, "The Demogorgon got me," foreshadowing the Demogorgon getting him, all the way through to the end, it was very well put together. Here in season 3, it didn't quite work as well. Like, they showed the characters sneaking into, what was it, Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead? One of those Of the Dead movies. And like, I think that's supposed to foreshadow the Flayed, because it's a zombie horde, but we never actually get a zombie horde in this. We get all the people coming together to form a giant flesh monster version of the Mind Flayer, which, I mean, good special effects for a Netflix series, certainly, but it didn't really connect to that. It didn't feel like it tied in at all. Nor did the stuff with Back to the Future or with really any of the things they brought up. It felt like this time the 80s references were there simply to be there. I mean, even season 2, for as much as people say it was a step down, it still tied everything in. The arcade stuff, that tied into the plot as well. Here, it's like, it's just reminding us that it's in the 1980s, so all this stuff we're nostalgic for is brand new at the moment. If I had to pinpoint a reason as to why this has happened, why we've had this huge step down for season 3, I think the answer can be found in the behind the scenes, beyond Stranger Things and those little specials. Because you watch those and you see the Duffers and Sean Levy and the actors, they're all talking about how they had things mapped out. These behind the scenes, by the way, were just following Stranger Things season 2. Sorry for the mix up there. They were talking in terms of those 2 seasons, and they kept saying they always knew what they wanted to have happen, where they wanted the characters to wind up, these specific moments they needed to get to, and they got to pretty much all of them by the end of season 2. For as much wiggle room as I'm sure they allowed themselves to move, change, or add things as the stories were developed, they still got to all those points. They still covered everything they need to do. They had a plan and they followed it. But it only got them up to season 2. Then you have Netflix say, now we need season 3, and supposedly they're also doing a 4th season from what I've heard, and they don't have a plan anymore. They don't know where they're going to go from here. It's all uncharted territory, and they've got to come up with something within a reasonable amount of time. And it shows in the quality of season 3. Like I said, there are still good elements within season 3 because it's the same cast and crew. It's the same group of talented people working on this project. But because they didn't have a plan, because they didn't necessarily know where they were going to go, things didn't quite work out. And season 3 honestly feels kind of like it was too different from the last 2 seasons. You could argue that's almost the point, that it's supposed to be about change and how things are different now and how we're moving into uncharted territory, so we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. I can actually see how they tried to work that into the season itself. There are those elements there. It's right there in the tagline, "One summer can change everything." And by the end, there's been a drastic shift in just about every single dynamic in the show. I just don't think it was executed all that well. You can have good ideas, but if you don't know what to do with them, they're wasted ideas. And I don't want to say that season 3 was totally wasting those ideas, but it didn't quite do them the way I know they could have. If they'd been given a little more time to develop things and to really iron out all the wrinkles and make this as good as it could possibly be, season 3 really could have been something special, just like season 1 was. Or at the very least, it could have been as good as season 2. As it currently is, though, season 3 is just not as good. And it also leaves me wondering where the heck they could possibly go from here. Because, like I said, from what I've heard, there's going to be at least one more season. But what could they possibly do? They included a little stinger mid-credits to set up a 4th season, which raises 1,000 different questions, but I won't get into all of that right now. But even with that setup, I don't know where the story could possibly progress. Certainly, I don't know how it could progress in a way that would ever live up to the reputation which Stranger Things has now set for itself. So, I don't know, folks. Season 3 might just be a fluke. I don't know. It might just have been a bad season, and when season 4 comes along, that will get us back on track, and we'll be looking at it and going, oh yeah, that's why I liked this show. But season 3 just didn't work. Not entirely. There were parts of it that worked, but compared to past seasons where everything or 95% of everything worked, this one just fell short. And it's unfortunate that I have to say that. But I must be honest, and that is my honest feeling on the matter. Maybe you feel differently, I don't know. The impression I'm getting is that a lot of people are also thinking this wasn't that good, but, well, maybe it'll pick up in season 4. We will see. Now, this isn't going to be the only time I ever talk about Stranger Things. At least, hopefully, it's not. I want to go deeper into analyzing the whole series. But while season 3 was still fresh, I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. And unfortunately, my thoughts aren't all that enthused. But at least we still have season 1. That was amazing. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.